Okay, I walked
Testing.
over without my
Okay.
glasses. What did he say?
I'm
My
filling in
turn?
today for Kevin Brangers, our chapter president, who unfortunately is out of commission with a bad toe break to his toe. And he is on bedridden and on painkillers, so he just was not in condition to make it today, but he does send his apologies, and we do wish him a quick recovery. We do have a great panel today, so I'll make these announcements brief. There is no chapter meeting in the month of April. Rather, we will be participating in a joint social with Young Council of Realtors with their annual Bowling Cup social to be held on April the 14th. This will be a great opportunity to network and expose the CCIM brand to younger professionals in our market. So be on the lookout for announcements on that, and we'd love to have you involved. Our next chapter meeting will be held on May the 12th. We are still finalizing the details of that meeting, so do be on the lookout for more details. Our annual joint Braves game social with the Alabama chapter has been scheduled for June the 16th. That is always a fun time to be had and great networking, so be on the lookout for information on how to secure your tickets. On the education side, we are hosting a 101 class this very week. This class is at full capacity, and I had the pleasure of meeting with many of our students last night at the networking happy hour that we put on in honor for them. Regarding future classes, our next class in April is a 102 class to be held April 18th through the 21st. We have a 101 class coming up August 29th through September 1st, a 103 class September 19th through the 22nd, and a 104 class that will be held in November, December. We're still finalizing the dates on that. So please help spread the word on those classes so we can get them filled. With that, I would like to thank our sponsors for 2016. Our platinum sponsors are Bull Realty, Kitchens, Kelly & Gaines, Marcus & Millichap, The Simpson Company. Our silver sponsors are Adams Commercial Real Estate, First Citizens Bank, National Property Inspections, Commercial Experts, First Colony Financial Corporation, Northwestern Mutual, Renaissance Bank, Stout, Kaiser, Madison, Peak, and Hendrick, Strategic 1031 Exchange Advisors, Excelligent, Standard Landscape, Strategic 1031 Exchange Advisors, and Telnet Connect. And with that, I would like to call on Leo to introduce our panel.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing? We're excited to have you guys here. Today we have a great panel. These guys are probably one of the most knowledgeable people in not only Atlanta, but around the state with all that is going on with their business development. So I'll read their bios. I'll give them a chance to finish some of your snacks or having some water. But let me start with Brenda. Brenda, she's a Georgia Power Project Manager. Ms. Robbins is responsible for facilitating the location, expansion, or startup of businesses wishing to invest in Georgia. Brenda assists companies in identifying potential communities, sites, or buildings throughout the state. She also provides market evaluation, construction information, engineering assistance, and serves as a liaison between the businesses and governmental agencies involved in this selection process. Brenda has a strong background in information systems and software, establishing data centers and talent recruitment. She has extensive expertise and experience with headquarter locations, information technology, finance and insurance, business services, bioscience, health IT, and data centers. She knows it all. Brenda has worked with more than 150 companies that have established a presence in Georgia, collectively investing more than $7 billion and employing more than 34,000 Georgians. Next, I have Mike. Mike directs a team of project managers who help executives locate multi-million-dollar manufacturing facilities in Georgia. The team responsibilities include evaluating sites and leading the state's incentive negotiations to land projects which generates jobs in the automotive, aerospace, and advanced manufacturing industries. Prior to this, Mike worked at the Georgia Tech's College of Business as Associate Director of Client Services. There, he worked with companies like Coca-Cola and Michelin, who partnered with Tech to develop non-degree executive education programs in supply chain management, Lean Six Sigma, and leadership. And last but not least, we have Greg. For some of you that were here last year, he's the one who did an outstanding presentation, and thank you again for hosting us this beautiful location. Thank you so much. Yeah, we liked it so much we came back. Greg is the Vice President of Economic Development for the MAC. In his role, Simon works to build and manage relationships with our economic development partners across the 29-county Metro Atlanta region and cultivate job growth across MAC's industry clusters. That includes bioscience, technology, mobility, supply chain, and logistics and global commerce. He also assists businesses and their consultants in their evaluation of Metro Atlanta for new or expanding operations. Previously, he served as the Senior Director of Project Management at MAC and worked with partners and MAC's projects management team to support businesses interested in expanding or relocating to their region. With that said, please, let's give him a big round of applause. Guys.
Thanks, Leo.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think we have an extra chair. We don't need an extra chair. So.
Well, we're going to have a volunteer panelist.
There you go.
So once again, welcome to the Metro Atlanta Chamber. Thank you all for coming back. And we hope that you come back next year, but it will be to a different location because this building won't be here next year at this time. For those of you who don't know, the World Congress Center will be purchasing this building and we'll be moving to new office space downtown towards the end of the year. So we always enjoy having CCIM come to the chamber, and hopefully next year you'll come to our new offices. But in terms of our panel and getting right into things, what I'd like to do is give Brenda and Mike an opportunity to talk a little bit. Leo gave us great overviews in our bio, but I'd like to ask Brenda and Mike to describe in their own words a little bit about the role that their organizations play in economic development and the services that you offer to the real estate community and to end users to expand in Georgia. So Brenda, if you want to start out.
Sure, glad to, and thank you all for the opportunity to be with your group today on such a gorgeous day in Atlanta. It's a shame we don't have a big corporate user touring the city today because it would be sort of irresistible, wouldn't it? As Greg mentioned, I am with the Economic Development Division at Georgia Power. We are a statewide economic development agency. Our role is to really partner with the state and the communities in helping to attract job creation and capital investment into the state. Our team actually does not house in a Georgia Power facility. We are located at Centergy because Mike's organization is there. And one of the services that we provide to the state is the availability of what is called the Georgia Resource Center, which functions as the marketing center for the state of Georgia. We have a team of researchers that collaborate with the research teams of both Greg and Mike's organization. We have a civil engineering team that is engaged more in projects that require new construction, new site development. We have a team of project managers like myself and a team of community development managers. So a full service agency, the way I always like to describe it is that we want to be the most valued private sector partner in the state of Georgia helping to expand our economy.
Thanks, Brenda. Again, my name is Mike Grunman, Director of Advanced Manufacturing for the Department of Economic Development, and it's great to be here today with you all. Look forward to the question and answer. My role is to direct the team that's most focused on recruiting companies in the aerospace, automotive, and durable goods sectors. The department also has teams that focus on logistics, food and energy projects, as well as foreign direct investment projects. And so since all those directors couldn't be here today, I'll speak for all the sectors that we have. So a big part of what we do and what makes the headlines is that recruiting, and with the services that we work hand in hand with the community and with our utility partners, helping identify buildings, explaining the incentive programs and so forth. The department also has a very active division that helps companies that are here expand globally. So with the idea being if they can create markets to export to, then there'll be more jobs created for Georgians. So that division is very active in helping the state's economy. The state's economy also has a big tourism sector, and so we have a division that focuses on growing that and attracting more people to the existing venues. And then, of course, our film division is responsible for closing down Ashford Dunwoody this morning, right? Hopefully nobody got caught up in that traffic, but yeah, that is another important segment of the economy. So we try and support growth in the state's economy on all these different fronts. And I can speak to what we do on the recruiting side, which I'm sure is of most interest to you.
Great, thanks. And to tie all this together, I think a takeaway for all of you is that what's really unique about economic development in Georgia is the close partnership between all of our organizations with our electric utility and the state's economic development office and our chamber, as well as all the local governments at the county and city level and the university system. It's very much of a close, tight-knit partnership, so that as you're representing clients that are either already here thinking about expanding, or if you have clients that are looking at establishing a new operation in the state of Georgia somewhere, all of our organizations are resources that can help with that. And so you can call any of us, and we'll bring the other organizations in to help, and we all have resources that we can bring to the table. As Brenda mentioned, significant internal research capabilities, but also connecting with the university system. We hear from our prospects that the number one issue is talent availability, that you could have the best real estate solution in the world, but if you have nobody to work there, it's not going to work out very well. So we work very hard to, as companies are evaluating the area, talking to employers that are already here to understand what has their experience been recruiting talent, working with the university system to understand the talent pipeline that's coming out and programs that they offer to collaborate with the business community, and then coordinating with local government on any local issues, building permits, zoning issues. I'm sure you don't ever deal with any of those with your clients, but in the case that you do, we can coordinate that with the local government. So again, just in terms of the big takeaway that I hope that you walk away with is that all three of our organizations are resources that can help you with your clients. So, and to get into some case studies and examples, I wanted to ask Brenda and Mike, Brenda, what are some significant recent projects that you've worked on, and how have you supported them?
Great. Well, I tend to work personally more on the office side, so primarily corporate headquarters, high professional services, and the marquee announcement that we had last year, that was the combined effort of all of our teams and many more people in Atlanta, was the Mercedes-Benz headquarters relocation. It is such an exciting thing to be able to stand up in front of prospects and business leaders that are considering relocating companies to Atlanta, and to be able to say, we are the chosen home of the North American headquarters of both Porsche and Mercedes-Benz. Because those are two such iconic brands, and any executive, I think, comes to the realization that if Atlanta can work for brands such as those, there's a good likelihood that Atlanta is going to be a very possible home for their companies as well. And in addition to Mercedes-Benz USA, we've had a lot of activity on the office side in the technology sector. If we look back over the last few years, we've seen IT centers established here by General Motors, EY, Deloitte, Kaiser Permanente, We have been successful in recruiting the North American headquarters of Sage North America. That's huge. That is a California-based software company that has moved headquarters here to Atlanta. So we're seeing a lot of velocity in activity. And as Greg said, when we are supporting those types of projects, much of the discussion is really about talent. It is about a balance of finding talent locally, being a community to which a company can recruit globally, and to be able to manage a business in an environment that is supportive of business and provide a quality of life and cost of living that allows for companies to retain their talent here and to draw that talent here. So a lot of what we do, much through the effort of the Chamber in the state, is really make connections. When we have a project considering those corporate decisions, a typical day for us would be to kind of start with giving them a big picture view of Atlanta. Then we engage the university system to look at long-term talent pipeline. We engage a number of business leaders from around the city to tell their personal stories. Maybe it's a company that has recently relocated and they talk about that process. It might be a company that's homegrown in Atlanta, but it talks about the talent pool here, how they've been able to build a business in Atlanta. And then we take them out, hopefully on a gorgeous day like this, and allow them to get a sense of what it's like to be an Atlantan. And then the very important process of the incentives negotiation fortunately lands with my buddy over here.
And Mike, in terms of the industrial work that you do, I know that the Port of Savannah and goods coming in and hopefully going out, are a big economic engine for Georgia. Maybe if you could just talk for a few minutes about what's going on at the port and the role that the port plays in Georgia's economy, that'd be great.
Okay, sure. Well, the port is responsible for over 359,000 jobs in Georgia. They're directly related to the port activity. So those are some in manufacturing, a lot in agriculture, forestry, the mining industry, but it is a huge engine. In the year 2015, there was about $500 million of projects or investment announced that were in supply chain directly related to the port activity. So it's a huge engine that we have for the state of Georgia in terms of job creation. Its impact varies depending on the specific project. I was looking at the exports and the imports today just to get an idea. And as you would expect, forestry products, mining products, the kaolin industry, those are big on the list of exports. In terms of imports, we have a lot in the area of automotive parts. The Port of Brunswick is the world's largest roll-on, roll-off port for importing cars. So we have a lot of, it's certainly skewed towards imports, and that's one of the things that makes the port such a tool for Georgia is with all the goods coming in from overseas, particularly from Asia, we're in a great position to have goods coming from multiple suppliers consolidated in a distribution center and then organized to distribute out to individual stores, if it's a retail distribution center, or if it's a fulfillment center, out to individual customers. So that's why the state has done so well in the distribution sector. It continues to be the strongest among our sectors in terms of investment and job creation. And Greg, you asked about what's going on there. A lot of you have probably heard about the port deepening. This is to enable these super post-Panamax, these mega ships, to be able to utilize the Port of Savannah, because right now it's not deep enough for them. The Panama Canal is due to be, the construction on the expansion of that is due to be completed next year. And so once that's done, then these big ships can come through the Panama Canal instead of the Suez Canal in order to serve the eastern U.S. And so it's a vitally important project. It was funded. I don't know if it got all the funding that we wanted just right out of the gate, but work is being done on that. And just to put it in perspective, the state of Georgia in the last decade has spent $800 million on improvements to the port. And over the next 10 years, we've got $1.4 billion scheduled to be invested. And so it's not just the channel that's important, but also all the infrastructure around the port and the port itself that makes the Port of Savannah special. It is the westernmost port on the eastern U.S., which therefore makes the shipments from the port to whatever their destination is faster than anywhere else in the United States. And that's a huge advantage for us that are working to sell real estate, create jobs, and attract investment to the state.
So sticking on the theme of ports, but switching to a different mode of transportation, Hartsfield-Jackson Airport is obviously a key economic engine for Georgia, not only in terms of cargo, but also passengers. I'm curious for both of you, I mean, what role does Hartsfield play when you're working with businesses?
Probably no bigger factor than air access through Hartsfield in helping Atlanta attract corporate users. Sometimes we hear the phrase that Atlanta is the busiest airport in the world, and I always go, shh. You know, what we want our prospects to understand is that Atlanta's airport is the most connected airport in the world. There's no other airport from which a passenger can board and land in as many locations nonstop than the travel convenience offered through Hartsfield. And when we're dealing with executives that are looking particularly at headquarters type decisions, what that translates into for them is better access to customers. When Newell Rubbermaid made the decision to move headquarters to Atlanta, customer access was really important to them. You think about their company. Their three largest customers were Home Depot, Walmart, and Lowe's. So by coming to Atlanta, they were physically closer to those companies, but also the airport gave them the ability to connect to over 150 cities every day, nonstop. In addition to that, it translates into more employee satisfaction, because in Atlanta, a business leader can leave in the morning, do a business meeting in New York, Chicago, any number of cities, and be back at home in the evening and go to his child or her child's soccer game, baseball game. I know some people, I hear say that if they missed a baseball game every once in a while, it might be okay. But there's the ability to add that convenience and spend more nights at home, which makes those employees a little happier, a little more content. So air access is huge. One of the things that we can brag about in Atlanta is that our airport has been rated for 12 years as the most efficient airport in the world. It is also very highly rated in terms of the convenience of having MARTA service into the airport, the fact that a business guest can fly into Hartsfield, board the train there at the terminal, and connect with a business without having to get ground transportation otherwise is huge. So I just think it's the biggest element of our sales game, really. And it's also very exciting. If you're not familiar with some of the plans that are underway to modernize the airport, that's a good thing to be aware of, because the airport amenities are being enhanced. There are more large windows, so there'll be more natural light, and it'll be a better customer experience. And we're also blessed that we have leadership at the airport that's really attuned to what that customer experience is.
And Mike, what are you seeing on the air cargo side at the airport, and how is Hartsfield helping with the projects that you're working?
I would say, I want to just tag on what Brenda talked about. It is equally important in manufacturing projects, because most manufacturing projects, and what's really driven manufacturing job growth in Georgia for many, many, many years now, is foreign direct investment. So those are international companies who are offshoring, coming to the United States because they've established markets here and now have a critical mass of volume to justify having a plant here. Because it's the most connected airport to European, Asian, Latin American destinations, it's a natural for companies in those locations to want to utilize Hartsfield. They're going to come through Hartsfield whether they locate here or in the Carolinas. So a lot of them, they've traveled enough. They don't want the extra layovers and legs involved in, choosing another location where they have to make that connection. So it's a huge part of what attracts international companies to the state of Georgia, and it's also huge in terms of differentiating Georgia from these other states. So we have Hartsfield, Carolina, and Alabama don't, and so that really gives us a huge advantage in terms of at least attracting them. Now sometimes they'll go to destinations like a Columbus or Macon or somewhere in between, Valdosta, but still it gets them in here to take a look, and then we can compete with the Carolinas on really anything that they have, and they don't have anything like Hartsfield.
And just to add on that, international trade and commerce is a huge part of our economy in the state. And in fact, for the projects that we worked at the Metro Atlanta Chamber last year, 60% of the landed deals that we had were foreign companies. So over half of the companies that we're talking to are foreign. And so that's clearly driving the work that we do. And Hartsfield is a huge part of that. The Port of Savannah is a huge part of that. Atlanta, it's not that we're becoming an international city, we are a global city right now. And Mike, I wanted to ask you, how is the state of Georgia, how are you marketing the state across the globe?
Okay. We have 11 offices around the globe. And so we have representatives that speak multiple languages, that work in their areas to get connected with the chambers of commerce. They go to trade shows. A lot of their work is focused on trade, helping Georgia companies establish markets there. But when you think about it, if you were a Austrian company and you want to establish a location in Georgia, one of the first things you'll do is go to the Austrian Chamber of Commerce and say, hey, we're looking at the United States. We think maybe the Southeast would be good. How can you help us? Well, our international representatives have relationships with all those chambers of commerce. And so we get connected with a lot of projects through those relationships. Very good example of one that happened recently is, as you know, Volvo recently chose the state of South Carolina for their new plant. Construction work and groundwork, excavation work is underway. And so, just as the case with all the other OEMs, there's a lot of suppliers that follow the OEMs to be close to the plant. And so one of our representatives in Sweden was part of this automotive manufacturers association, and found out that they were planning to visit South Carolina to check out the sites and get a feel for where they might be able to locate. Well, he convinced them, hey, can you carve out a day to stop by Georgia? And so they did. So we got them on Friday. They had been in South Carolina the whole earlier part of the week. And we set it up just right. They were coming out of Greenville. They had done a tour, I guess, of BMW. We thought they were leaving that mid-afternoon, so we said, well, let's not make them drive the whole way to Atlanta. Let's stop in Gainesville. And of course, it shows so well. Tim Evans, who some of you I know Tim, the community there does such an excellent job. They have, ZF has put multiple operations dating back to the 1980s, and the most recent announcement was probably just a couple years ago. And they have a critical mass. They have one of the few Swedish manufacturers in Georgia, SKF Bearing. And I'd been in their plant. I knew it was a very cool plant to see, just jam-packed with equipment, total advanced manufacturing. So we took them there for a tour and a presentation. They stayed at the Legacy Lodge, which is just gorgeous. And they were just amazed at Georgia. And really, they felt like we really differentiated ourselves. So from there, we came down here. Atlanta Chamber hosted I guess it was a lunch that we had and a presentation. Chris Carr came to speak. And then we went over to Georgia Power to the Georgia Resource Center that Brenda described, which is the best gathering place, an incredible multimedia geographic information system. That it was a great visit. And we are planning to follow that up with participation in a meeting that they have scheduled for October. So that's kind of where that relationship building starts and carries forward, and we're hoping to get some of the suppliers here in Georgia as a result.
Great. So we've talked a lot about labor pool and workforce availability, and the universities are a key part of that, but not just the four-year schools, but the technical college system of Georgia is a big part of that, and the state's Quick Start training program is a big part of that. But maybe if each of you could comment, maybe Brenda first, about your interaction with higher education and the role that that plays in the work that we do and the success that we've had as a result.
Certainly, the university system is a very regular partner, really a day-to-day partner in working with us. And that is another one of the things that distinguishes Georgia, because companies tell us that in many other states, the university system doesn't really see itself as having an economic development mission. And in a lot of states, the university system doesn't really feel a very close association with the business community. Whereas here, we have leaders from the university system with the role that's designated to be the one-stop shop as the entree to the university system, to help with identification of the institutions that have the best fit programs that match the degree programs with the business needs of a particular entity. And we start to make those connections very, very early on in the process. Of course, we also connect with the career services organizations of the universities. In addition, the alumni associations that are in other cities, because that's a great source of talent that has an interest in perhaps coming back to Atlanta. And then the other thing that I would recognize in a group like this is the importance of Hope Scholarship and the distinctive advantage that that really gives us in Georgia when we're messaging with our employees. On a corporate headquarters relocation, typically a company has a large number of key individuals that they really want to make the transition with them. And their decision is oftentimes based on choosing a location that will give them the highest acceptance rate in terms of bringing their key talent. And when we have the opportunity to explain to business people the HOPE program and the impact that can have on the families of their employees, it's very, very compelling. Greg has heard me say a number of times a story about a prospect we were dealing with some years ago who is a California-based company that did end up in Georgia. We talked about Hope Scholarship and the fact that we have these quality universities, no income threshold for Hope, pure academically driven scholarship. We kind of covered it and went on to the next session, and this man was kind of dazed, and he said, "Stop." He said, "Can you do that last part again?" And we went back to it, and he said, "I have 5 children, and the oldest one is 14. So it made a real difference for him. But not only does Hope impact the individual family, what Hope has done for us is really, really very broad-reaching. We've seen that all of our universities have been able to increase or really heighten their faculty recruitment because good faculty want to teach really strong students, and we're keeping our best students in the state. We have employers that tell us it's harder for other employers to poach their employees to move outside of Georgia because people are planning on Hope Scholarship being a part of their family's future. So Hope is really a great, great asset to all of us in continuing to grow our economy.
And Mike, I think you've got a lot of experience on the technical college side with a lot of the industrial companies that you're working with and the Quick Start program. So if you could address those, that'd be great.
Okay, great. It's huge. How many of you here have heard of Quick Start? A lot haven't, okay. Quick Start is really the state of Georgia's foremost incentive that's offered primarily to manufacturing and distribution operations. It helps back office operations as well. What Quick Start does is provide training services at no charge to either new or expanding manufacturing and distribution operations. It has been ranked #1 in the country for programs of its kind. Most states offer some form of a training incentive. The reason why Quick Start has been ranked #1 for, I think, 6 years running now is because they customize the training to a far greater extent than any other training organization in the country. All the training service is totally customized to the company's process, equipment, procedures, standards, and culture. So Quick Start will go, as soon as the project announces, Quick Start puts a team together, goes to whatever location, whether it's in Cleveland or Japan, studies the operation, meets with the company's operations management team, human resource team, subject matter experts, completes a needs analysis, then puts together a training plan, and starts work on developing training media, which includes 3D animation, video. They actually have a 3D printer to create training tools that can be used on the job. So it is amazing service. And if you have any manufacturers that have used Quick Start, they're huge proponents and supporters of the program. So to your point, one of the things that we like to do when we bring companies in is to connect them with a company that has used Quick Start so that they can get the firsthand report on what a difference it's made for their company. Typically what you hear is a company's planning for the startup to last 8 months, and then Quick Start compresses that time down to 3 months. So it enables them to get up and running much more quickly than they otherwise would, and that then enables them to realize that return on investment in that plant much quicker than they otherwise would. And it helps Georgia in its competition for future expansions, because a lot of companies have multiple plants around the country or, of course, around the planet. And when they're looking at which would be the best place to locate it, having that Quick Start training there is really been invaluable in helping the state attract that investment.
I've also heard companies say many times that if they've used Quick Start, what they experience is a much lower attrition rate among employees, because the employees who start the job are so well trained that they feel comfortable doing their job, they have a high sense of job satisfaction, and they're more likely to stay with the employer. Whereas oftentimes it can be hard in a startup where a company has to churn through a lot of employees before they can stabilize the workforce. So Quick Start, Mike's being humble, he's played a key role in Quick Start in his career, but it really is one of our strongest attributes.
And just my take on higher education and how it's impacting our economy here, how many of you have driven through Tech Square and Midtown at Spring and 5th Street? So some of you, but if you haven't driven through there and you want to see the impact of higher education, drive through that area of Tech Square and Midtown, where you'll see the Centergy building, which is full of startup technology companies at the Advanced Technology Development Center, which is Georgia Tech's incubator. They have an accelerator program called Flashpoint, where they provide intensive mentoring and coaching for startup companies, and then they take them on a roadshow to get funding for their companies. And many successful companies you all have heard of, like Pindrop, for example, have gone through that program and achieved some significant investment in their company and then scaled up their employee base. But you'll also see very well-established companies like AT&T and Panasonic, Southern Company, Delta, ThyssenKrupp, who have all opened research and development operations in that building to be at Georgia Tech's campus, to collaborate with the faculty on campus and the students, but also to interact with the startup technology companies that are there. And over the last 2 years, that area has really blossomed. And then it's gotten to the point where NCR, as many of you know, has broken ground on their new corporate headquarters right in that area. Cousins Properties is building that. And then just south of 5th Street on Spring, you have Georgia Tech collaborating with Portman Development to build the High Performance Computing Center building, which will break ground this summer. So between NCR's building and High Performance Computing Center, the participation and the number of companies in that vicinity is going to grow rapidly over the next 2 years. And then what's gone along with that has been a lot of student housing, multifamily apartments that have gone up in that area. So that part of Midtown, 2 years from now, will be dramatically different than what it is today. And that's all because Georgia Tech is, the top engineering school in the United States for graduating women and minority engineers. And diverse employment base is a key issue for the employers that we're working with. So Georgia Tech is such a key part of our business attraction strategy, particularly for technology companies. But it just, as Brendan knows, I always love talking about Georgia Tech and the impact that that's having on our technology economy. And you can see the results right in Midtown at Tech Square and more coming. But I did want to ask both of you, we hear about because our economy has been relatively strong for the last couple of years, and we've had positive absorption on industrial and office real estate, and vacancies have gone down. How has that impacted the work that both of you are doing?
I don't see an impact. I think that we have enough buildings left in kind of all the different size ranges that we have that carrot or reason to visit Georgia. And then it will turn into a build-to-suit project because it frequently, whatever existing building is there is not quite just right, particularly for a manufacturer. And so it will become a build-to-suit project, which we find to be very attractive. If they build the building exactly how they want it, they're more likely to invest more in it and invest more in it over time. That's on the manufacturing side. On the distribution side, we're starting to get low on inventory. So, and that is very much driven by what's available in the size that they're looking for. So we're hopeful that there's more spec building on the way.
And I would echo that last sentiment on the office side. I think what we're seeing is, great resurgence of the Atlanta market. We are seeing a lot of interest in Atlanta. I've had tremendous success. And along with that, we have seen the vacancy rate on existing office space really fall. And of course, what happens when vacancy rates fall is that rent rates go up. And rent rate has always been a competitive advantage for Atlanta when companies are comparing us to other cities. Hopefully what we'll see is that there'll be at least a comparable rent escalation in our competing markets, but we are seeing a little bit of rate pressure that discourages some clients or doesn't give us as wide a margin. Companies that are looking to relocate, they're looking at how do they pay for the tremendous cost of moving a company and a number of people from city A to city B, and often the rent rate on commercial real estate is one of the components of that payback. I would also say that particularly for companies that are looking for near-term large blocks of space, we have not a long list of options at this point. And early on in a process, if you think big picture in the process, a company that has decided that it needs to relocate will start by examining a very long list of cities, and they'll continue to work through a funnel until they reach a short list of cities in which they'll do a really deep dive. And that short list might be anywhere from 3 to 5 cities. But as cities are being identified for the deep evaluation, real estate is clearly a component that will be examined. And if in one city you might have 1 or maybe 2 blocks of existing office space that could be workable, and in another city there are 5 or 6 blocks, that company is most likely going to start the process where they see that they will have more options, more ability to negotiate. So you're kind of fighting for a place on a short list, and scarcity of real estate will likely disqualify us from some projects.
Great. So
build buildings.
definitely. And tell all your friends to build buildings, too. I know we wanted to open it up to all of you for some Q&A. We'd love to answer your questions. Hopefully we covered a lot of what you wanted to hear, but yes. Transportation certainly comes up. That's definitely a question that we're often asked about. And I think that our consensus is that 2 or 3 years ago, we didn't have a very good answer to that question. But today, we're feeling much more confident about what we can tell our prospects, primarily because of the transportation, the excise tax that was passed last legislative session that'll add $1 billion annually to our transportation network. And all of the creative approaches and engineering solutions to some of our choke points along the way, like hot lanes along certain areas or reversible lanes and diverging diamond interchanges. As we've seen these projects come online, we've seen some easing of congestion and greater throughput in those areas. Now, every problem hasn't been solved, and as we head into the start of the 400-285 reconstruction, we're going to go through a period of some transportation pain. But when we come out of that, we're very confident that we're going to have a lot of positive opinions of the result of that work. Now, on the public transit side, we're often asked about MARTA and rail and bus service. And a lot of employers that we're working with, particularly on the office side, are citing public transit as a key location driver. And we can see State Farm building a campus on top of a MARTA stop in Central Perimeter, and Kaiser Permanente going to the Pershing Point building in Midtown. They cited MARTA as well. And certainly Mercedes-Benz USA mentioned public transit when they selected Abernathy Road and Sandy Springs. So as of today, we have slightly less of a good answer on public transit than we do on roads, but we're following the passage of the bill in the legislature this week to allow Fulton County and the City of Atlanta to add additional funding to expand MARTA. So we're hopeful about that. And I know Courtney Pogue is here from Clayton County, and I know it was wonderful to see Clayton County opt into the MARTA system a couple years ago. So that was a very significant expansion, the first expansion of MARTA since the 1970s, since its inception. So we are seeing some promise on the transit side as well. But Mike and Brenda, if you want to add anything to that.
Now, I think you covered it quite well. It's definitely a concern. I think that the thing that we never really know is how many project opportunities disqualify us because someone's had a bad experience with congestion here. Those are the projects that don't get to the stage of visiting. Sometimes when we're working with companies that are coming from larger markets, they're very accepting of the fact that we have transportation issues because it's something that they're familiar with in their origin cities, and they see an improvement coming here, even though we think of our situation as being very severe. Sometimes comparatively it's not. But I do think that there are opportunities that we've lost that we'll never be able to identify because of that. So it is a real concern. And as Greg said, it is an imperative for us to be able to have an answer and show a plan.
There is Completion of the Jimmy DeLoach Parkway is just about almost done. And that gives limited access, like interstate access between the port and I-95. So that's huge. The port has two Class 1 rail providers already, CSX and Norfolk Southern. That keeps rates low, which is another big advantage. Not all ports have that, so have either of those. So we're pleased to have that.
There is an inland port that is being developed north of Atlanta that will benefit us all. I don't know if you've read this story, but the inland port will take traffic from, or take cargo from Savannah via rail and offload from rail to trucks north of Atlanta, and that will take 50,000 truck trips off our highways in Atlanta every year, and that is huge. The business people like these sort of common sense solutions. Okay.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Great minds think alike, right?
Well, most manufacturing companies are looking outside the immediate metro area. So yeah, every chance we get, we want to tell them all about the great benefits of places like Albany, Valdosta. One of the hottest sectors right now for manufacturing is the Savannah area. It gets looked at by almost all the prospects that come through. I think it's it's the port is a big part of it. The port access. They have a little bit more air service than the others. Albany has some commercial service, so that's helpful. Right.
Do we have time for one more question? All right. The momentum that I've seen in downtown and the CBD has been on the tourism side primarily, with the new attractions, with the College Football Hall of Fame across the street and the Civil Rights Museum that opened, but was very significant to me, I guess it was about a month ago. Post Properties broke ground right across the park on a 400-unit multifamily apartment building, which will be very significant for downtown. And then, of course, the growth of Georgia State in taking up office space in the downtown market have been the key drivers that I've seen, which I hope will lead to more large corporate users looking downtown. That would be fantastic.
I think there's slightly less space per person, but the biggest differential is the build out of the space and the environment that's being created with more collaborative space, or and employers are thinking about the real estate solution as being a part of their recruitment and retention policies or practices, I meant to say. They want to create an environment that draws the employee in, that encourages the potential employee to choose to go to work with them, and that encourages that employee once there to stay a little extra at the end of the day, to kind of like the space. And you see that employers are trying to create spaces that feel much more like home than they do a traditional office space.
Let's all give our panel a round of applause. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. Thank you again to our wonderful panel, to the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce for hosting the event. Thank you again to our sponsors. Again, there is no April meeting, but please do come out for the Bowling Cup Social. And we will see you again in the next meeting in May.